3, 2, 1. Richard Muncaster, you are the CEO of the Care Workers Charity. Absolute pleasure and welcome to the Care Home Show.
Oh, my pleasure. Really good to be here.
Great to have you. So, I always like to start with this question. So, how did you get involved in the sector?
Well, I've worked in the charity sector for about 20 years. Never in the care sector, just charity sector, but with a really sort of quite mixed range of interesting and important causes. I've worked in child protection, I've done work in the arts, a lot around disability rights and environmental protection as well. So it's quite a mixed background, I suppose. And I suppose one thing that unites all of those things is that in each of the organisations I've ever worked, there's been a group of people who just 100% want to make some aspect of the world a better place. There's something that they're not quite happy with, and they're really committed to changing it. And when I came across the Care Workers Charity, I saw that same ambition in them. So that's what really sparked my interest. So as I was looking at the role, I obviously started to dig a little bit deeper and research the sector a little bit more. And I just got more and more excited. I really started to see all the challenges that the sector faced, and most, importantly, that the workforce in the sector face. And I just thought to myself, my God, there's work to be done there. So
absolutely,
that's what got me involved, really.
Superb. And I mean, you've answered it on some level, but why is what you do so important to you personally?
I think it's care work is really important work. At some time in our life, the chances are that we're all going to rely on the support of a care worker, and we're going to hopefully be supported in a very dignified and compassionate way. And that to me says that care workers are an absolutely essential part of the social fabric of our society. That they're essential. That's given. So to me, it's just completely wrong that they aren't given the recognition they deserve, alongside doctors, nurses, teachers, and all those other professionals working to improve society. It's wrong that despite working 12 hours shifts, that many of them can't pay the bills at the end of the month, and it's wrong that the emotional strain of the work can be so great that many of them are endangering their own mental well-being. But I think the real point is, and the real reason why I think it's important work, is because it doesn't have to be that way. This isn't a lost cause. These aren't necessary evils. We can fix many of these things. And I recognise that there was a real role for the Care Workers Charity, I suppose, in uniting the sector in that ambition, bringing everyone together and driving that change. And frankly, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
It's a bloody good reason to get out of bed.
Well, that and two quite loud children, actually.
That'll do it for sure. If you ever had any trouble getting out of bed, that'll just to reinforce the.
It's a good motivator. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one would imagine that almost everyone that will be watching this will have heard of the CWC. Hopefully we can introduce the CWC to some new people as well. But for anyone who hasn't heard of the charity before, can you explain for us exactly what the organisation does?
Well, our main focus at the moment is supporting care workers through crisis. So, as you know, there's almost 2 million care workers in the UK. We know that many of them are struggling with mental and physical health conditions. We know that many of them, through no fault of their own, are struggling financially, and we know they're not getting the recognition they deserve. And that means that the people working in the care sector are probably more likely than other sectors to hit moments of crisis in their life. And again, through no fault of their own. And that's where we step in. We provide that safety net. That mainly is on the form of one-off grants to just help people through those moments of crisis so they can start to put the pieces of their life back together again. And alongside that, we also provide a little bit of signposting as well, so that we can push people towards other services or other initiatives that could also give them a little bit of help. And I really can't overstate how important that is to provide that support at that crux moment in someone's life. So take Lauren, for example. Lauren is a care worker who, when she came to us, she was 12 years into her career, and she was escaping domestic violence. One day she made the important and difficult decision to leave home, and her young son left in the clothes that that they were standing up in. So overnight she found herself homeless, she found herself as a single mother, and she found herself with a reduced income because of all the issues in her personal life was affecting what she could do at work. So that is a moment of huge change and shock in someone's life. Eventually the local authority found her a place to live, but that was after a stint living, in bed and breakfast, which is far from ideal with a young son. But this new flat that she had, it was just a shell. It was really important to Lauren that this new flat represented somewhere that she could start to build new memories with her son. This was the start of a new life chapter for her and her son together, hopefully a much more positive chapter moving forward. But she just wasn't in a platform, in a place where she could build those memories. And we just did something really simple. We provided the money to get carpets and get them fitted in the flat. And that just made it a home for Lauren. It was, to hear her talk about it, she talks with such pride. And her son talks with such pride about the carpets. He'll shout at anyone who comes in the flat with shoes on. It's just that little thing, that little piece of help that we can give that really gives someone the platform to start seeing the future with confidence again, or stops them from getting to that tipping point where things start to really spiral negatively. So, yeah, it's important work.
When you first told me the story about Lauren, it just made me think how easy it is to take for granted having a home, and whether it doesn't have to be anything kind of big or grand, but just having somewhere that you can call home that's a comfortable environment for you to kind of live your life and things like that. It's so important, and effectively Lauren's decision was so hard because she had to leave with her son from what would have been her home previously from such a devastating set of circumstances, and then to go and set up again in what is effectively a house. Or a flat, or whatever the environment was, but it's so important to turn the flat into a home and somewhere that they could call their own and make their own.
Yeah, it's a foundation. It's a springboard that the rest of all your hopes, dreams, come from. So yeah, it's really rewarding. Really rewarding.
Got you. Okay. So the charity's obviously doing some incredible work, and I loved. We talked earlier about the impact report and things like that. I've said it a few times. The event itself made me well up when we were hearing about Lauren's stories and other people that the charity's looked after. But how do you achieve all of that?
Oh God, well, none of it would be possible without our team. I'm really lucky to work with a group of highly motivated, highly talented, highly professional individuals and people that day in, day out give absolutely 100% to our cause. And I'm talking about the board there as well as the staff team. Everyone is right behind the organisation, and that's fantastic.
Great bunch of people.
Really
Both
are.
The executive team and the non-executive team are all, they're all committed, and they're all so focused on achieving ultimately the growth of the charity to support as many people as they can. So it's
really
great
impressive team, really impressive. But equally important, I think, are our partners and our sponsors. So over recent years, a growing number of care providers, and that's home care and care homes, and organisations that work with the care sector, so suppliers to the care sector, have really got behind the organisation. They've recognised that they have a sense of collective responsibility to support the people that sit at the heart of our sector, i.e. the care workers themselves. And we all know that being a care worker is physically and emotionally demanding. We all know that the pay isn't great, and we all know that there's going to be times when you're going to struggle. And that's why our partners, these providers and these other companies, recognised two really important things. One was that there really needed to be an organisation that was there to support them, that could be that safety net. And two, crucially, that it was their responsibility, their duty to fund that organisation. The Care Workers Charity doesn't get any government subsidy. We don't have a big endowment like many benevolent funds that we can just draw off. We don't get legacies. We get a very limited amount of individual giving. So absolutely vital to our organisation sustainability is the fact that the sector is behind us. And that's exactly what they did. They got behind us. So 2 years ago, we were only able to give out £2,000 in grants to care workers that needed them. Last year, we gave out £150,000 in grants. So it's an astronomical growth, but it's still not enough, to be honest. That, you know, £150,000 is great. We were able to help well over 400 people, but, you know, there's many, many more out there that do need our support. And having to turn people down on a monthly basis, people that genuinely need our support, people in real moments of crisis in their life, having to turn them down because we don't have the funds is the most heartbreaking aspect of my role. So it's really important that, I suppose, this sense of collective responsibility is infectious across the sector. It's really important that, you know, every care provider gets behind us, because the issues that we're responding to, the issues that we're trying to resolve on a day-to-day basis are happening at all points across the sector. So it's really, really important that the charity, our sector's charity, gets the support from all sectors of all sections of the sector as well.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I find it a pleasure to be kind of an unofficial brand advocate of the charity. There's plenty of people that I speak to in kind of passing from within the sector where I think I almost do it subconsciously now, but I almost want to make sure that I bring it up in conversation just to see whether people are involved, and if they're not involved, then you'll have an email introduction from me, or I'll recommend that they come and get involved in one of the fundraising events. So you've been in post since October 2018, from when you had the baton passed you from Alex Murthy. So tell me a little bit what was going on with the charity when you came into post.
Oh well, I think there was so much about the charity to fall in love with. Yeah, as I said, the staff team were and are utterly fantastic. You know, the energy levels in the organisation were infectious. Everywhere you went, people were telling you what fantastic job the organisation was doing, and you know that they were so supportive. There was that real sense that the organisation's star was rising, I suppose. So it was for me just fantastic to be, you know, thinking that this is a journey that I'm going to be on as well now. So, you know, fantastic place. But I think what's also true is there were probably just a few growing pains starting to emerge as well. You know, we were like a car that had gone from 0 to 40 miles an hour, you know, really quickly, but without shifting out of first gear. So whilst the acceleration was utterly staggering, there were some slightly, you know, worrying noises starting to come from the engine a little bit, I suppose. So, you know, which is fine. That's normal for any organisation, you know, that's growing so rapidly. But it did mean that for me, that, you know, I had to start thinking about, okay, well, what do I need to support the staff in a slightly different way? What bits of infrastructure do we need to put in or change that, you know, were right for the organisation 6-12 months ago, but aren't right for the organisation now, and certainly won't be right for the organisation in 12-18 months. So a lot of the focus when I first started was things like the finance system, the CRM, the website, making sure that the office environment was suitable, making sure that we had the policies and procedures in place so that the staff team felt valued and understood, you know, what the culture of the organisation was. You know, I guess it's sort of regimenting things a little bit more and making sure that those structures were in place. It's not the most exciting bit of the role, but, you know, really important for any organisation if it's going to grow to that next stage.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking off camera before we started, weren't we? What works for when you've got kind of a super small organisation, it might be like 1 or 2 people at the time, to then having a handful of people as well. That's a completely different operating model, and it works in a different way. And then equally, when you're looking at growth and you're looking at more people and more activity and delivering whatever result it is your organisation delivers, ultimately that operating system starts to change again. So it's preparing yourself for the future, for growth, and making sure again you don't start creaking at any point.
Horses for courses, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, what happens next with the charity? What do you envisage seeing out on the horizon?
A lot, basically. So I mean, as I said, that the reason we've done this work on the infrastructure is because we are bracing for continued growth. And part of my remit and part of the reason why I came to the organisation was to start to develop a much broader service offering to support care workers in lots of different ways. And the reason behind that is just simple maths. There's 2 million care workers in the UK almost, and we can't support all of them with grants. Even if we had the support of the entire sector, we would not be able to support the care workers who needed it with grants. So we needed to get in front of the problems. We needed to start thinking about developing and delivering services that prevented care workers from hitting those crisis points in their lives, and not just helping them to pick up the pieces afterwards. And the reason is that that's much more efficient. Prevention is better than cure. It's true. So for us, that started with really wanting to understand what those issues were. It's really important that we understood what it was that care workers themselves told us were the things that were affecting them most at work, at home, because of the work. But also what's already out there. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So where there are examples of great service delivery or great employee support, and there's lots of providers doing some really good stuff, we wanted to just shout about that. So that could be replicated more widely across the sector. So the first thing was research, a really extensive piece of research to really get underneath the issues. And what did we do? We read everything we could, every article, every impact report, every research report, everything that was out there that related to this issue we read. So there's an extensive piece of desk research. And then on top of that, we spoke to 200 care workers because we really wanted to see if the things that the research was telling us was actually collaborated by people's lived experiences. And it was, there was a good correlation there. We also talked to some of the sector leaders, so people, senior managers, people who've been running care services for umpteen years, HR directors, thought leaders across the sector, people who are doing innovative, interesting things in the sector to try and drive improvements. Simon, you were one of those. So thank you for your contribution.
My pleasure.
Again, just to get their point of view. So that was a slightly different perspective, which was really interesting as well. And then we ran a load of focus groups with care workers, again, just to sort of enable us to dig a little bit deeper and think, so we could sort of think, well, we found this, is that your experience, and why do you think that's happening? And so we got quite a deep sense of what the issues were for care workers. And on a top line, it probably won't surprise anyone to know that the main things that came out for care workers were issues around mental health and wellbeing, issues around financial health, work-life balance. So care workers, a lot of them have caring responsibilities outside of work, and balancing those things can be a real challenge. And then as well, the fourth thing was a sense that, care workers didn't always feel valued in the workplace, and certainly not by wider society. So like I say, none of that's particularly new. But because of the way we did the research, because of the depth that we were able to go to, we were able to understand what really sat beneath some of those issues. So take mental health, for example. What we found was that one of the main reasons, certainly not the only one, but one of the main reasons that care workers experience stress and anxiety in the workplace was because they're not always able to deliver the standard of care that they themselves want to deliver. And that's because a number of reasons. Sometimes the service is understaffed, so everyone's too busy. Sometimes there's too much office work, paperwork, a host of reasons. But I think what's interesting for us was, and it's corroborated by why people came to this profession in the first place. What's interesting was that care workers are motivated by delivering great care. Yeah, that's why they joined. That's the reason people join the profession, was because they want to help people. That's what they told us. We had a quote from one lady. She said that the best part of the day is when you put a smile on someone's face. A thank you means the world to me. And that's really inspiring, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
But the flip side of that is that when care workers can't put a smile on someone's face, when they can't deliver the standard of care that they want to deliver because of all the other pressures going on in the workplace, then that really affects them. That empathy, that compassion, that sensitivity that you want to have from care workers, that makes care workers great at their job, becomes the very thing that starts to drag them down.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't care so much, it possibly wouldn't affect them so much, but they do care. So it's crazy. And I think my favourite quote across the whole research was again from one of our focus groups, and the lady said, if you work in retail, you don't go to bed at night thinking about the well-being of the clothes. And I just think it's such a succinct way of pointing out what's so unique about the care sector. It's not like any other service industry. Can't think about it like any other service industry. Care is innately human. Now, I don't honestly know if when she said that she was talking positively or negatively. I don't know if she goes to bed with a smile on her face thinking about the well-being of the people that she looks after, or she can't sleep at night because she's worrying about the well-being of the people that she looks after.
Probably a mixture depending on what day of the week it is and what her experience has been on a day-to-day basis, of course.
I think that's the point. I think, that same thing could at once be something that's incredibly motivating for the care worker, or a source of real anxiety and stress. And that, I think, I don't know, it means we're faced with this baffling irony, in a way, that you've got the very qualities, the empathy, the sensitivity that makes someone so great at their role, is actually the thing that's stopping, or could be stopping, that role from being so rewarding and nourishing for them.
You can put yourself in the care worker's shoes, and to envisage being in that set of circumstances and caring so deeply about the people that you're looking for, and then because of bureaucracy, time restrictions, whatever it might be, kind of the whatever kind of downward pressure that you've got on you, just hindering your progress, your fulfillment, your meaning, the value that you're looking to try and bring to the world, and then kind of your inner monologue going off, kind of saying you're not doing what you're here to do. You can imagine how intensely frustrating that would be for a care worker.
Absolutely. I mean, these qualities, just there's empathy, there's the patience, the compassion,
beautiful characteristics.
Really positive things, but obviously clearly quite volatile things as well. They need to be handled with care. They can make your care team, but potentially they can break it as well. And that, I suppose it's interesting, to think about that, but it showed us something really potentially useful as well. And I think the learning there was, actually, if we want to, support care workers around mental health, maybe we don't necessarily just need to be thinking about what we need to do to motivate them. What we need to be doing first is thinking about what can we do to stop demotivating them. That's where we need to start. That's the starting point for this. They already come with all these fantastic qualities that make them brilliant at what they do. We just need to create an environment where they can express those qualities. So, it was about, the question became for us, what can we do to create that really empowering, supportive workplace culture where care workers can be the carers that they want to be? And like anything, it's probably much easier said than done, but it is possible. At the end of the day, that's just a cultural shift. That is talking about workplace cultures. How can we make workplace cultures, in a way that support care workers to be the carers they want to be? That is within our gift. It's within our power to do that. We as a sector, we don't need to wait for a green paper. We can start to do that today, tomorrow. And it would be a really important change to make. That's just one example. The research is peppered with examples like that, things that give us that insight to tell us, okay, these are the things that we need to do. These are the things that we need to try. These are the pilots that we need to run to start changing cultures on the ground so that we can provide those much more supportive environment for care workers, and by extension make them better at what they do, provide a higher standard of care. And that's when we'll start to see a drop in sickness rates. We'll start to see retention rates rise, and we'll start to cut back on a lot of those recruitment and agency fees. So this isn't just about benefiting care workers, it's also about benefiting care providers as well. And that's important because if we are going to deliver services in a sustainable way, and I hope we are because that's how we drive impact, then it's really important that we get care providers on board. They're absolutely part of the solution. So for me, moving forward, that's the sort of services that we want to grow. But back to the research. So this research is going to be published. We're going to publish a report in October. It's called "The Beating Heart of Care: Supporting Care Workers Better."
Mm-hmm.
Really took us a long time to come up with the title. Actually, that was the most difficult bit.
So often the way.
Yes, and I don't think we're happy with it, but never mind. So I'd encourage everyone to read it. It's full of, as I say, lots of really interesting insights. It's mainly aimed at management and providers, but as I said, we found lots of really useful things during the course of doing it that would be able to support care workers and care managers more effectively around wellbeing.
Sure.
Across the board. So what we're going to do as well is we're going to launch a bit of a campaign whereby we produce monthly resources for care workers with lots of little exercises and signposting tips and hints to direct people towards the support where we know it exists. But as I say, the main thing for us is really using this to inform service delivery, and that's what's going to be really exciting for us over, the coming 6-12 months.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to see the report. Having been involved in the steering committee, obviously I've got kind of a little bit of insight into that, but obviously you've put a huge amount of work into the report itself. So fascinated.
It's been a good, big organisational focus over the last 12 months, certainly, and it's our first research report as well. So from an organisational point of view, I think we're just very excited to join the debate, as it were.
Doubtless that this will be the first of many as well, and it's going to help set the context for the not just the future of the charity, but the impact, obviously, that the charity can make. So, you've explained a lot about the kind of the what's going on the for the workforce, but why is the report and then the subsequent impact of the report, why is that so important?
Oh well, where to begin? We collected so much data around this, and I won't drown you in all of it, but I will, and I'm going to refer to my notes here, give you a few top-line stats. So,
please do.
Around mental health, first of all, 51% of care workers considered leaving their role in the past 3 years due to work-related stress.
And that's 1 million people. It's just when we were talking through this before, that's just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, just because it's a huge number of people that are sat there thinking to themselves, am I in the right place? Which is it's a travesty. It's a huge opportunity, but it really makes you think. For
a sector that is very conscious of the fact that it faces a recruitment challenge, stroke crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really interesting stat because we can support people to improve their mental health. We can make environments and cultures, so that they're not a source of anxiety and stress. It is possible. We know. We've seen it in other sectors. We can do it. So, 42% of care workers said they experienced stress, and 27% said they experienced anxiety, often or most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
big numbers.
Big numbers. Now think about that. Often or most of the time. 42%. Experiencing stress often or most of the time.
Thing is, that's chronic stress. That's the type of stress that leads to long-term mental ill-being and potentially even physical. It might even have a kind of a physical impact on the people that are having those types of experiences. And that everyone's had a bad day, a bad week. Sometimes people have bad months, but if that's just continual, if that's life, often
or most of the time, that's what the terrifying thing for me was. Yeah. And if there's always that sort of double standard when it comes to mental health and physical health. And we I think it's getting better, but there is still a double standard. If you thought for that as a second as physical health, if you're doing a job where 42% of the people doing that job were put in physical harm,
you'd get shut down.
Or most of the time.
It just wouldn't work, would it?
So that is what's happening, across mental health for this workforce, which is staggering. I mean, again, I don't think the stats are particularly surprising. I think people won't be particularly, it's like, yes, that's what I'd expect to hear, but when you think about it,
it's almost been normalised, hasn't it? Which is that's almost a travesty in itself. The fact that people will see this and they'll say, "Oh well, that there or thereabouts," which obviously you're in a position where
when you think about it,
it does make it real. But this is obviously the why it's so important. Again, is that you're pioneering, pushing forward to make a positive difference with the people that are looking after our vulnerable people.
Absolutely. And the last one on that, the number of sick days taken across the care sector is 25% higher than the national average. So, and that's why.
It's a huge number, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's similarly worrying when you look at financial well-being. 48% of care workers in England are being paid below real living wage, and that compares to 23% across all of the economy. So if you're a care worker, you're more than twice as likely to be being paid under the real living wage as anybody else you meet. So anybody else you meet down the pub, wherever, you're twice as likely.
Staggering number again, isn't it?
It really is. It's shocking, and there's no real reason why. 40% of care workers we spoke to felt that financial concerns are a real challenge in their personal life, and that's a challenge that affects their working life as well.
Of course.
Yeah, and that ADAS annual survey found that 73% of care workers who were thinking about leaving the profession were doing so because of pay. So we knew pay was an issue. We know it's a big issue. We know there's not much we can necessarily do about pay overnight. Obviously, we can campaign for better rates, but there are things that we can do to improve people's financial well-being. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of support, access and advice when it comes to accessing benefits or different types of financial planning that we can support people with, and we know that will make a difference. So again, an area where we can drive change. Mm. If we look at caring responsibilities, 53% of care workers are mothers, and 29% provide or arrange care for someone with a long-term health condition. So think about that responsibility, managing 12-hour shift and unsociable shifts, nighttime shifts as well, with the caring responsibility of a young child, or even a not-so-young child, or an elderly relative who requires your support as well. It's incredibly difficult to manage. I won't read them all, but 76% of parents we spoke to said the cost of childcare was their biggest problem. Childcare is expensive. If you're on minimum wage, and many people are, you'll probably pay more for your childcare, or an equivalent amount for your childcare, as you're actually earning yourself.
Very often, yeah.
So, and obviously there's benefits that help, but it's a real issue for people. And again, there's things that we can do. There's things that where we can work with employers to be more flexible in employment patterns that can make a real positive difference to people, that will take that anxiety, that stress, that unnecessary stress, anxiety out of their lives and make them better care workers because they're not worrying about that.
From an operator perspective as well, just having a happier workforce that don't have some of the stresses that you've, or at least have some of those stresses in a more manageable, they're better able to deal with those stresses and strains of being a care worker and being in that environment, etc.
We had lots of care providers who told us that low mood among staff was a real problem because it was affecting the morale, the culture, the energy, I suppose, in the home, and
just how people are turning up on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and equally, lots of care workers told us that they often experience low mood in the workplace because of the workload. So again, I think there's always a temptation, and I'm not saying this is true across the board, but I've certainly I've been to lots of events, lots where people talk about the green paper, the elusive green paper, and there is a real need, and obviously there is an absolute thirst for that to happen. We need to have a sense of what the long-term picture looks like, and certainly what the investment picture looks like. But I think what I would say is, it's not a magic bullet. It's not gonna change everything overnight. And to be honest, there's not going to be significant. I can't imagine there being significant amounts of investment pouring into the sector. Certainly not right now. There's so much insecurity around everything else. But there are things that we can do on the ground. There are things that we can do at an operational level, at a cultural level, that will drive real change. And like I said before, I'm motivated by making things better, and this is an area where we can actually make things better. It's not just problems; it's also that there are solutions here as well.
Absolutely.
And that's what's really inspiring for me. So that's what we're going to be working on moving forward.
Got a big job, Richard.
It's going to be busy, yeah.
got a few important kind of world problems. UK problems specifically, but I'm sure they're kind of iterated around the world. But yeah, let's start with the UK. Let's see what we can do there. But it's fascinating to hear about the research. Again, a lot of the assumptions that we were talking to in the committee meeting, and a lot of that's been kind of validated and things. But to your point, these are opportunities. Yes, they are challenging sets of circumstances and they're having significant impact in people's lives, but for every challenging set of circumstances, that presents an opportunity for improvement. And as you say, this doesn't have to be just the default for the way that it is. This is the time, and we're now in a space where we can start making improvements. So it will be interesting. I hope that we can continue making recording episodes of the podcast, maybe in kind of 12-month cycle loop, so we can look back on the last 12 months and say, this is everything that we've been doing. This is the impact that we've been making. Here are the stats that we're helping to improve over that period of time to ultimately make those 2 million people feel more valued and to be in a better space and to be able to just as much to be happy for themselves, but then to be able to show up to work in a way where they're going to look after our vulnerable people in the best possible way that they can, so that they can experience that meaning and that fulfillment of why they got into care in the first place.
That'd be really interesting, because I think it will evolve. The assumptions, the ideas that we've got now. As I say, this was our first piece of research. It's quite deep. It was an extensive piece of research, but it's not got all the answers, not by a long chalk. So the next stage of learning will be as we start to pilot these services, and we go, we thought it was that, but actually it's this. And so our ideas are going to evolve. Our assumptions are going to evolve. Where we think we can have the biggest impact is going to evolve. So this is a journey. So yeah, it'd be good to chart it.
100%. Well, as ever, if we can help in any way, shape or form, we always will do. And I feel like I feel very lucky to be able to contribute, but also to be able to watch your journey and the charity's journey to be able to go make the positive impact that you're looking to have in the world. So
take you up on that. You'll be up and down Snowdon a few times before we're done, Simon. Don't worry.
A few more times. Well, I shall look forward to the next CWC adventure. My experience of any of the activities, any of the fundraisers, they've all been an awful lot of fun. But you can't forget the important reason why we're doing all of the stuff that we do. So excellent. So tell me about the vision for the charity.
Oh, it's really simple. Our vision's really simple. It's just 4 words, in fact, and what it is that care workers thrive. That's it. So we're aiming to build a world where care work is seen as a career of choice, really, where those doing it are properly emotionally nourished by providing fantastic levels of care, not stressed or anxious because it's so emotionally draining, where care workers are valued in the same way as teachers or policemen or doctors or anyone else of those any other profession who sews together the social fabric of our society. And I think, crucially as well, we're choosing a career in care doesn't mean a life of financial instability. So that's what's really important to us. Now, that doesn't mean we'll ever stop giving out the grants, no matter how successful we are. There's always going to be points of crisis in people's life. So we're always going to need to provide that safety net. But if we are going to tackle some of these structural issues that exist for care workers, as I say, we're going to have to think more broadly and grapple with these wider questions as well. So that's the vision, that care workers thrive.
Got you.
Nice and simple.
Nice and simple, but so impactful at the same time. So, and tell me about what are some of the things that you're doing to make that vision a reality at the moment.
Well, I think it's incremental. So, resolving some of these big structural, political, policy level issues, aren't going to happen overnight. And to be honest, I don't think we as an organisation are in a particularly strong position to influence some of the change that needs to happen at that level right now. But, as you know, ambition is in our DNA, so there is very much a sense across the organisation that we'll get to that point. And I think we'll get there through service delivery. So, rolling out these services is going to have a direct impact on care workers' life and on what it is to be a care provider as well. But for us as an organisation, it's going to transform our understanding of the issues. We're really going to start to get under the skin of what it is that we need to do at an operational level to make things better. And that's going to give us something very interesting to say, I think. That's going to enable us to contribute to that debate in a very meaningful way. So as we develop these services, as we develop this understanding, as we develop, I suppose, a more representative understanding of what it is to be a care worker and the experiences of care workers across the UK, then I think we'll have a really important part to play in that policy debate at a national level, and that will put us in a position to start informing that. So that's the plan, I suppose. In terms of what we need to make that a reality, it just really comes down to galvanising the sector. It's we can't do this alone. So, and that's why our vision's so simple. That's why we say we want to make, it's important for us that care workers thrive. And day in, day out, what I'm going to be doing is getting that message out across the sector that if care workers thrive, the whole care sector thrives.
Absolutely.
So, get behind us.
Yeah.
And that's our rallying call.
It's very easy. Not return on investment, but it just makes so much sense to be able to get behind the cause, because the how the improvements that you're looking to make in the world transcend the rest of the organisation has such a positive effect on everyone that's involved. It's a no-brainer.
Hopefully, people will see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, keep banging the drum. That's absolutely right. So. Okay, it's been really, really interesting hearing more about the CWC. It feels like you're almost at the bottom of a mountain in some ways, in the fact that you've got the big bold vision that you're looking to try and achieve. And there's strange analogy, didn't mean to go down this, given the fact that we were one of the last times we were together was actually climbing up Snowdon. But yeah, there's an awful lot of stuff to be achieved. But as you say, you've got the team, you've got an awful lot of the sector behind you, and it's really, really exciting going on that journey and getting to contribute it in some ways, but then also just being able to kind of sit back and watch you guys achieve what it is you're looking to achieve. So it's very exciting.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Mildly terrifying, but mainly exciting.
It's got to be slightly terrifying. You wouldn't have a big enough if you're not mildly terrified, then your vision probably isn't big enough. So I'd say that's a good place to be. Yeah. Or you're deluded. I wouldn't say so. Not on this occasion, at least, anyway. But I'd like to be able to wrap up the show with these two questions. So, what piece of advice, if you were looking to give if you were to give a piece of advice to somebody looking to make a positive impact on the sector, what would that piece of advice be?
To make a positive impact on the sector, I would say, listen. Just listen. It's really easy to sort of think that you understand the issues or to have a great idea and try and mould the reality of the world around that idea, but you'll probably become a cropper if you do that. So, and it's I've been in the sector just less than a year, I suppose, and every day I've heard something that's either inspired me or challenged me or forced me to think about things slightly differently. There is so many people out there that have got so much to say, so many interesting things to say, and so much really valuable lived experience. So before you launch headlong into your next great initiative, just do what we did, I guess, with the research report, and just take the time to listen, understand what's out there, understand where the change needs to happen, understand what's already happening that you can work with or that you can complement. Just start by listening.
I can imagine you've done an awful lot of listening over the last 11 months. So yeah, and that ultimately that enables you to propel you so that you can move forward with the whatever it is you're looking to achieve in the world. Obviously, it's serving you well within the CWC, of course, at the moment.
You can't move forward on your own. This is everything that we do has to be done in collaboration, because we're not and you can't build collaboration unless people feel that you've listened to them.
Absolutely.
So
I'd say that's sterling advice. And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever personally received?
I think it's from my Auntie Barbara, actually, who lives over in Australia. And Auntie B, she said to me once, she said, never focus on the money. Just focus on doing a really good job, and the money will follow. And I've spent most of my career sort of involved in one way or another in fundraising. So, that's slightly contrary advice for me. That's, fundraisers tend to be obsessed with income targets. So to not focus on the money, isn't something that should have served me particularly well. But it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. If you've got two people, one of whom is really focused and inspired and motivated by developing a great service, something that will really meet an identified need, something that can be sustainable in the long term, something that will change the world, for a real positive. And then you've got another guy who really just wants to make money. It doesn't take a genius to see who's going to produce something of value, who's going to produce something that people want to invest in, who's going to produce something that people want to get behind, and who's going to produce something that ultimately really takes off. So I think it's great advice. You'll be happier, you'll be more successful if you just focus on doing the best job you can do and don't think about, the money.
That's a stellar piece of advice. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure.
Cheers. Good to see you.
You too.